We're going to play a fun pattern recognition game today. I'm going to play some clips for you, and I want you to see if you can spot something common among all of them. This was in Beckenham, not that far from me, actually. Only last week, there is a series of cars being smashed up, rather nice-looking motors, actually, in the pandemonium, and there is a gathering of architecture students, doctors, scholars, all who seem to be very upset with the cars and those driving them. Now, that this could be a very uncommon sight, but this followed the teen takeover of Clapham in late March, early April, where Marks and Spencer's was looted, McDonald's was attacked. This was described as a link-up. To me, it looks like a scene from World War Z, but there you go. And as the Daily Mail says, mobs of youth were reported storming a high street in Clapham. Now, Clapham has been, previously, one of the slightly better areas of London, or at least an area that has attracted some of the more upwardly mobile migrants from places like Australia. Now, it seems to be mobbed by, well, GDP generators. The Metropolitan Police Force confirmed that two teenage girls were arrested on suspicion of assaulting an emergency worker, and that a dispersal order was put in place. The Marks and Spencer's on the High Street, which was looted by a similar flash mob over the weekend, so it was another looting, and led to two arrests, shut early amid fears of a further raid. Security guard working for the supermarket told the Daily Mail they had to lock the shoppers in for a while before gradually allowing them to be escorted out by officers. Meanwhile, a local Waitrose also closed its doors. All the very, middle-class supermarkets, the place that you go to when you've achieved underclass escape velocity to have a more pleasurable shopping experience and actually, avoid the sort of shoplifting, but no, they're not even safe now. Waitrose closed its doors, sticking a police-advised closure notice onto its front door, and Boots was also targeted very badly, according to witnesses. Further videos showed large groups of balaclava-clad youths gathering outside a McDonald's restaurant in the area as marked and unmarked police cars raced to the scene. It's funny, the description sounds very similar to my visits to American cities, where everything, shampoo, all sorts of toiletries, locked behind glass cases. Weirdly, Father's Day cards and sunscreen remained on the shelves untouched. It's weird that the same thing's happening in America, and the same thing is happening in Britain. And actually, the videos look remarkably similar. I mean, this is the link up, that the youths running away from McDonald's. I'm sure they're all just there to play the stickers Monopoly game, claim their loyalty points. Here's other angles of it. Here's the M&S being raided. Actually, here are all the people responsible for why we can't have nice things these days. They're just looting food from the shop. Don't know whether or not to take it home to their parents, presumably to sell on second hand. It's very confusing as to why this is happening. James Graham, who previously worked at the Prosperity Institute, I think he's still there actually, said that he was caught up in all this. He tried to go to M&S on Clapham High Street. It was flanked by police who informed him that all the shops on the High Street are closed as they're being looted by teenagers. Teenagers is to blame. Lawful citizens can't shop, private businesses are closed, youth still causing havoc, lawless London. Completely correct. It really is that this is a lawlessness problem. But did you notice anything that the people in the videos have in common? They're all black. They are all black. You can now breathe a sigh of relief that we can acknowledge basic reality. Well done, pattern recognition is possible. And for the people saying, well, hang on, we don't want to generalize here. Okay, it's the exact same in the United States. It's starting to be the same way in Japan. It's the same across London. I'm sorry, it's not just a problem of fatherless households, though that does exacerbate it. It's not a problem of poverty or inequality or, as we'll get onto absurdly, a lack of youth clubs. This is a cultural and ethnic issue. It happens everywhere. It is black teenagers, largely the men, but also, as we can see, some women as well, engaging in looting, lawlessness, violence, and quite lethal crime, actually. Here's one horrific example from the other day. Anojan Gnaneswaran was stabbed to death after being chased onto railway tracks in Twickenham by Dino Donaldson, who was smiling and laughing about the murder. Donaldson was caught on CCTV on the bus after committing the killing. He was also caught on the audio of a Ring doorbell camera saying, "I stabbed him through the back, bro. I stabbed him fully. I watched it and I felt it go in him." Yeah, he stabbed his victim, Anojan, in the chest, abdomen and thigh after chasing him onto the railway tracks on the 8th of January 2024. They had gotten into a fight at the station. Two respective groups had gotten into a fight over a drug deal to pay for £50 of 10 MDMA tablets. He was a third-year student studying accounting and finance and had competed in the World and European Championships in karate. And he died at the scene. So, just wasted his life for a handful of drugs. The perpetrator in question had 74 wraps of crack and heroin found in his bedroom by the police. But why was he here? Doesn't need to be here. Family never needed to be here. The people that raised him never needed to be here. Same with Axel Rudakabana. We've just had the Southport inquiry go through. And yet again, as I've covered time and time before, the parents knew that he was ordering lethal weapons from Amazon, growing poison in his absolutely rancid bedroom. They provided him the card and the Amazon account and the Wi-Fi on which to do so. He had a Twitter account which he was looking up colonial grievance narratives. He wanted white genocide. The parents hid this from social workers, the police. They knew he was going to go to school with a knife the week before the Southport killings, and they hid it anyway. They raised this killer. They shielded him from the authorities. They stopped consequences from befalling him, and they got 3 girls killed. This guy has been killed because of the drug deal. I had a kid in my year at school actually get his head kicked in by a drug dealer who was killed on the street. And another kid who actually was arrested and forfeited a football scholarship at an American university because he was caught by the police dealing drugs after his dad had died. And, sorry, but they're all black. You can't tell me not to notice this pattern. And so when, James Graham writes in The Spectator afterwards, "This is how to stop Clapham rioting," the Afro-Caribbean community is one of the best integrated of all migrant groups in Britain, and so this week's scenes are particularly unfortunate. No. That's insane. That's a genuinely delusional thing to say. They're actually not. Sorry, they're really not. I mean, if you just look from the Met Police and the Mayor of London at the crime statistics, and this is coming from Sean Bailey, by the way, so, he's black chap himself. Despite making up only 13% of London's total population, black Londoners account for 45% of knife murder victims, 61% of knife murder perpetrators, and 53% of knife crime perpetrators. And that's after stop and search has decreased the ability for the police to catch them before they commit the knife crime. And of course that won't be 13% because that's encompassing older black men and women who don't commit as much crime. That's including infants who can't commit that level of crime. And that's including young black women who are more likely to commit things like shoplifting than young white women, and are actually more likely than many white men to commit murder, especially in the United States. But they commit rates of violent crime at rates less than their young black male counterparts between the ages of 13 and 50. So this is, let's say, 4% of the London population, responsible for 60% of knife murders. Is that integration? Is that success? I think it was a total disaster. These people just shouldn't be here. They shouldn't be ruining just shops and our high-trust society and our capital city and other people's lives. They shouldn't be killing people in our country. It just wouldn't happen if they weren't here. They don't need to be here. This is always a choice. It was a choice to bring them in. It is a choice to let them stay. It is a choice to allow their parents to be in our country, taking advantage of welfare and benefits, as Juice will likely comment underneath all of these videos. Do you happen to live in social housing? Because they overwhelmingly do. It is a choice to allow them to stay here at our expense and commit crimes. We don't need to subsidise their stay. And also, even if you are unwilling, for example, to repeal citizenships, which I think we should, you could still run a Nayib Bukele-style mass incarceration program and lock up the 1% of the population that is the most troublesome, the most violent, and leave society free and peaceful for the remaining 99%. Because El Salvador looks a hell of a lot cleaner and safer than London does these days. The videos are just so stark, and it shows you that this is all a choice. As well, are we saying that these statistics are evidence that the black community in London has integrated well and is making a positive contribution to our lives, rather than just making it unsafe, unfamiliar, unpleasant, is making transport more expensive by just bumping the barriers and not paying, causing the fares to go up for the rest of us. And nobody wants to confront them because, again, they might have a knife and they might end your life over mildly disrespecting them and asking them to obey the law and the rules like everyone else. But here it says, stop and search in London has been widely criticised for racial disproportionality. This is in a recent policy exchange report. Often framed as evidence of racist policing. Critics argue that black Londoners are unfairly targeted, claims we robustly challenge. Data shows that black people are overrepresented among victims of the most serious knife crime. Within London, black people are 3.38 times more likely to be killed in a knife-enabled non-domestic homicide than white people. Similarly, black people are 5 times more likely than white people in London to be charged with murder, and that's despite our anti-racist justice system. While only 13.5% of London's population are black, 48.6% of robbery suspects are described as black by victims when reporting the crime to the police. In contrast to allegations of police racism, mainly emanating from the complete farce that was the Macpherson report, outcomes of stop and search in London reveal that black suspects are 64% more likely than white suspects to receive community resolutions when a prohibited item is found when searching for a weapon, rather than be charged or summoned and sent to court. So they're let off with a slap on the wrist so they keep doing it again, despite being 64% more likely to actually commit the offence. This suggests, the report authors say, there may well be a leniency being shown towards black suspects compared to white suspects, and this means they go out and commit more robberies, more knife crime, more murders against blacks and whites alike. There is one community that is doing this, and they aren't being punished for it, and they're making life hell for the rest of us. So no, they haven't integrated well, actually. They're a real nuisance, and even just talking about it in the most obvious terms that our eyes can see, not just in Britain, but around the world, can get you cancelled. It's so boring. It's so tiresome. There are plenty of black people that are sick of this. Like, I guarantee I'm going to get texts from Nigerian Christians after this going, yeah, bro, I live in this area and I just want to raise my kids, and these guys just make it really difficult for me. And I empathize. You know, I lived next to a Ghanaian family growing up, and he was actually, you know, a GP doctor, and their kids went to school and they behaved themselves and they were Christians and they were a nice family. Like, I don't think their kids enjoyed going to a school where rates of knife crime and robbery and violence and gang culture was disproportionately high. This is the reason why at the moment that black people in the US get money, they get out of the ghetto because they don't want to live next to projects where gunfire is going off the entire time. Like, these people, these lawbreakers make life worse for everyone, but they are given leniency because one community, when they are policed, say, well, even scrutinising us for our disproportionate bad behaviour is racist, therefore that gives cover to the people that commit the most violent crimes most frequently. And we all have to suffer. Not just in our tax money, but in our quality of life, and our very real risk of just getting killed for mildly disrespecting some psycho that should never have been here in the first place. In London, for the period 2003 to February 2024, compared to the capital's population, black people are 5 times more likely to be charged with murder than white people. Despite the claims by some that the police's use of stop and search is racist against black people and other ethnic minorities, the eventual outcomes of such encounters suggest an alternative. When individuals are caught in possession of an unlawful item and subject to formal sanction known as a positive outcome, being charged or summoned to court, receiving a penalty notice for disorder or a community resolution, black suspects are far more likely, 64% more likely, to receive a community resolution than white suspects. So whites are committing less crime, but they are receiving harsher penalties. It's almost like they're telling the whites, you should know better, and they have a much lower standard of expectation for the black perpetrators, despite them repeatedly committing the crimes at much higher levels than their white counterparts. And also, James, if they were truly integrated, if Afro-Caribbean people were an example of an integration success story, why are they constantly demanding reparations from whites? If they were truly British, who would Lenny Henry be demanding reparations from? Himself? David Lammy? No, it's me. Because when there's money on the line, suddenly we can tell distinctions between groups based on ethnicity or national origin. So, no, if they were well integrated, they wouldn't be demanding my money. But the response to these teen takeovers was the most laughable part. You have Bel Rubiero Addy here, the Labour MP for Clapham, who said that the shooting of Chris Carber, by the way, was an example of institutional racism when Chris Carber himself had shot a bloke in a nightclub and reportedly tried to ram the armoured police officer who fatally shot him, with precision, by the way, with his car. Bell said, "I'm very concerned by the recent scenes of unrest on Clapham High Street. This intimidating behaviour causes havoc for local residents and businesses alike. It's inexcusable. The police have informed me that we will see increased patrols in the area over the coming days." Okay, but you're the one that keeps saying the police are racist for policing black people when they commit crime. So it's your policies that have led to this. It was also the Tories' policies of basically decriminalising shoplifting and getting rid of thousands of police officers during austerity, causing the capital to become lawless. But it's your London mayor who got rid of stop and search. It's you that says the Met Police are institutionally racist and they should stop policing black people. And again, I notice a conspicuous lack of blame being attributed to the one community producing the perpetrators, but you're happy to collectively blame white people for various historical injustices that, frankly, are largely fabricated anyway. And then there's Marks & Spencer. So Marks & Spencer themselves, obviously one of the shops that got raided, one of their bosses, this is the retail director, Thinus Keeve, he criticised Sadiq Khan in a letter posted on Marks & Spencer's website. Quote, "Without a government seriously cracking down on crime and a mayor that prioritises effective policing, we are powerless." This is completely true. He also, by the way, questioned claims from Sadiq Khan that crime rates are falling in the capital. He said, "I keep hearing crime is falling, especially in London, something none of us believe and very few people working in retail would see." And of course, he's right, like Sadiq Khan is just lying about the figures. Overall recorded crime has increased by 31.5% in the Metropolitan Police area of London in the last 10 years, and violent crime has increased by 40%. The data from the Mayor's office, which is not publicly available, shows falls in theft from a person by 13%. Well, that's because the reporting is lower because the police don't follow up on it. Robbery of personal property by 13%, and residential burglary down 10%. Reminder, the overwhelming majority of police forces in this country have not solved a single burglary in the last year. So, yeah, it turns out crime reports fall when the police stop solving crime. And also, for all these crimes, we still know who the vast majority of perpetrators are. It's the share of the population that just so happens to be around 13% too. As I specified earlier, it's a little bit less than that. But point being, the crimes that are up, though, are violence against the person by 40%, sexual offences by 75%, possession of offensive weapons by 23%, and theft from the person 207% over the last 10 years. Also worth noting, there's now a rape reported every hour. I think it's like every 52 minutes or something like that in London. And as Centre for Migration Control points here, up to 47% of the rapes reported in London were committed by foreign nationals. So that means more than half are committed by men who never needed to be here in the first place. Either the first or second generation immigrants who have a British passport and don't show up in the statistics, but are from the ethnic groups that are disproportionately more likely to commit these kinds of violent crimes. As we can see here, there's just a list from Afghanistan right way through the Middle East and African countries that are just far more likely to commit these kinds of crimes. Why are they here? Why is Somalia the fourth most likely nationality to commit a sex offence in London, and 72% of Somalis living in Britain are in social housing, and a further 20-something% are already in prison, meaning pretty much every single Somali in Britain is living here at our expense. Like, why are they here? And for the people that are saying, "Oh, well, you're putting too much of an emphasis on ethnicity here," okay, seriously, please answer me this question, because I don't want it to be the case, right? I would much prefer that all these problems can be remedied by better parenting, which I think is definitely a factor, don't get me wrong. I think the violence in black households against their children encourages them to be impulsive and violent in the outside world. I would much rather things be remedied with, job opportunities and be nice to one another classes in school. But how come it's everywhere? How come it is in Africa? How come it's in America? How come any of the immigrants that come to various countries, even countries that have no history of things like slavery or segregation or imperial oppression, like Japan, how come the same patterns emerge? And how come, it's not hypothetical, I'm just seeing it on camera phones now with my own eyes. I'm seeing it, I live in London, I see it all the time. Can you explain to me, if you truly think that this is just a consequence of social and economic factors, can you explain to me why it happens everywhere? Because I would love an explanation. And it would cause me to be far less pessimistic than I currently am. The great irony of this, though, is of course M&S backed BLM back in 2021. This is the fruit of abolish the police. Maybe if you didn't want them, you shouldn't have encouraged it. And this is also deeply embedded within the Met Police. This is Met Police Chief Mark Rowley, Sir Mark Rowley, you know, knighted for his services to ruining our capital city. He said he wants the Met to become a truly anti-racist and inclusive institution. What a success. He says, Black Londoners have been let down by the Met over many years, and while we continue to take steps in the right direction, there remains a long way to go and there is a lot more work to do. Action, not words, will rebuild trust in our service, so we must now remain focused on delivering real change that is seen and felt by our communities and workforce. Don't worry, we're seeing and feeling the change if we're shopping in Waitrose or M&S, if we're walking down the street late at night in Beckenham to just see what looks like scenes from the Liberian Civil War play out in London. So what's Sadiq Khan's solution? Youth clubs. He's actually doing the meme. He's pledging £30 million of Londoners' taxes to go to more youth clubs. The Labour government are also doing the same. In the north, Lisa Nandy is pledging for more youth clubs in Bristol, Nottingham and Leeds, Brighton and Hove, Birmingham, County Durham, Manchester and Tower Hamlets. Brilliant. 50 new youth clubs that I'm sure are in such short supply, which is why black teens are stabbing each other and just looting M&S and Waitrose. Turns out, as this intrepid Anon has discovered, there are 10 youth clubs already within 2 miles of the M&S that got looted in Clapham. I don't think a shortage of pool tables is the problem. Though, as Millennial Woes points out, I think that the machete technique that they've been practicing at Notting Hill Carnival will give them a great spinning backhand when it comes to ping pong. Again, these people live in a bubble of delusion because they aren't willing to admit that there are inbuilt, indigestible differences at the group level on average. Not every individual, of course. There are some exceptions. But you've just got them doing, like, intellectual circus tricks to try and get around this issue. I mean, one of the insane academics quoted in this Guardian piece, Dr. Tanya de St. Croix, which, you know, obviously not engaging in motivated reasoning on behalf of a certain ethnic group and its reputation here, is a senior lecturer in the sociology of youth and childhood at King's College London, and said the reaction to the Clapham link-up was exaggerated and an example of moral panic. I can imagine for some bystanders, including young people working at restaurants and shops, it might have felt scary, but the public reaction and the language of swarming and gangs of feral teens is demonising young people unfairly. What kind of young people? See, the rhetoric doesn't work because the disparity between what people can see, so the truth, and what you're trying to convince them of is always growing. Actually, the reason it's growing is just because of the existence of camera phones. CCTV. We can just see how people behave when they're just left to their own devices, operating off of habit. And when there are no repercussions for behaving in a criminal fashion in the way that they actually want to behave. Like, when you're not going to get flogged or put in the stocks, when you're not going to get hung for murder, when you're not even going to get prison sentence, it turns out certain populations just do this. And more youth clubs, or shutting your eyes and pretending that they don't, it won't solve the problem. The most hilarious reactions were on X. This is from Tom Bennett OBE, who has clearly won an award from the state for being a behaviour advisor at the Department for Education. And that's worked out well. And he responds to one of these videos saying, what are the unmet needs here? What is this behaviour communicating? What restorative process will enable us to avoid scenes like this in the future? Remigration. They're gonna do it. They're just going to do it. This is my dispute with Catherine Burblesing. I don't think that 5 years at a good school can stop this kind of behaviour in all of these populations that reliably behave like this everywhere they go. Again, there's some exceptions to that rule. I know them. They're really nice people. And they also think this is mental. Like, I hate to use an example, but Chris Rose, really nice guy. He was sharing these videos, just going, yeah, just lock them all up, man. Just throw them in prison, please. Like, what? There's no unmet need. Again, it's not youth clubs. It might actually be a lack of hugs from their father as they were growing up, because I would guarantee that most of these children don't have fathers, but they can't articulate to you their unmet needs. They can't spell them out. They can't pronounce them in a language you'd understand unless you get Google Translate up to decipher multicultural London English and Debunkics. And it's because the average IQ of this crowd is really, really low. And I'm sorry, that just does cause serious problems with impulse control and envisioning the second order effects of your actions, empathizing with people that might have negative repercussions from your behavior. Also, these people come from countries that don't have a concept of the future or democracy or maintenance. Like, what are we talking? Unmet needs. You don't understand them. You don't understand how they think. And so, like, it's just not going to work. All of this is just liberal myth-making. It's cope. It's pure cope. And the greatest cope on display was Kemi Badenoch. Torn apart in the comments on this. Children smashing up shops in broad daylight, stealing and even filming themselves doing it as if it were a game, is a much bigger problem than is being recognised. This is a total collapse of consequences. To those making snide comments about race or black kids, you do not see scenes like this in Lagos or Nairobi. Yes, you do. You absolutely do. It's across Africa. It's the Congo, Liberia, Rwanda, Ethiopia. Hang on, are you saying you don't see this in Nigeria, Kemi? Like, you described non-Yorubas as your ethnic enemies. There is currently an ethnic and religious genocide going on in Nigeria by Fulani goat herders against Christians. And you're telling me that this violent behaviour, let alone looting, is not characteristic across Africa? I agree with the need for better enforcement, for shoplifting offences, more stop and search, but all of these things are just managing the problem. Like, diversity scales upwards into authoritarianism because you don't share a frame of reference for what is good, you don't share a pre-political we, you don't share an identity to whom you all belong in order to solve problems that you all face. And so it leads to squabbling, and it leads to looking out for your own, and it leads to one group stealing from or committing violence against another. And so the state has to step in to try and keep the peace between these groups and impose ever more restrictive measures on daily life to try to stop completely avoidable violence. Like, none of these crimes needed to happen if these people were not here. And look, if Kemi Badenoch really were the anti-woke girl boss that the Conservative Party tried to promote her as, she would be able to say this. She would be able to say, no, the police aren't institutionally racist. No, the Macpherson report was bogus. We should throw it out. And no, black people and white people don't commit crimes at the same rates. And actually, if we want a peaceful country, we're going to have to recognise that disparity and police it accordingly. Like, there aren't massive white machete gangs. There just aren't, right? But there are across Africa. There are in London now. Southend-on-Sea is a majority white area, and yet it was completely submerged in 2024 with black teens running around committing crimes with machetes. It's everywhere. And this is why the cope just isn't convincing. Because it's not just people, bystanders, CCTV, filming the perpetrators. They're filming themselves. They're bragging about it. They're putting it on social media. Are you telling me that I'm meant to look at this video and not draw the conclusion that black teenagers are more likely to commit this kind of crime when they're bragging about it? It's their entire youth subculture. Like, they use it as a form of social clout among their peers. They're on camera boasting about it, and you're telling me that I have to watch these videos and not draw the obvious conclusion that there is a pattern here. Like, I'm going to play this video. I'm sorry in advance for the inarticulate screeching, because it does sound like a zoo on this bus. But how am I not meant to draw the conclusion that this is a young, black, largely male but some female problem?
Both for DTIP, you know. Exactly. Well, just imagine, look at the time we're getting back from Clapham, you know. Just a normal day in Clapham, man. We have to go, you have to wait for DTIP. Wait for DTIP, and you go, boy, coming in like this. I'm like, yo, I'm probably gonna get a spanking, man. Wait for DTIP so you need to receive, man.
I'm probably going to get a spanking is about the only word of truth that this fine young scholar has spoken. And I somehow think that that might be part of the problem that black families resort to violence rather than reason, and so they don't instill a conscience in their children, and so they just act impulsively and take what they like and don't think about how their actions might affect other people. And so I look at videos like this. Everyone looks at videos like this. We look at Iriana Zarutska's murder in North Carolina. We look at the Austin Metcalf killing. We look at the behavior after the 2020 George Floyd riots. We're just seeing it on our timelines, organically produced by the perpetrators, by CCTV, in newsreels. And so video content, as Mary Harrington points out in Unheard, has led my generation to just draw obvious conclusions that previous generations who are engaging in motivated reasoning and base their view of race relations on Hollywood movies did not. And that is that the internet is a pattern recognition amplifying tool, and the patterns that are obvious are that non-whites commit crime at a much higher rate, especially per capita, than whites. Even in absolute terms, as we've seen with knife crime, they commit it against whites far higher than the other way around, despite being constantly told that whites are racist. And so anytime we hear that, they've successfully integrated, or that this is purely an economic problem, or that youth clubs will solve this, it's just boring. It's just not true. We're not going to lie to be politically correct. We're not going to fix the problem that way. Like, when was the last time you heard of an English event where the police officers were stabbed, sexually assaulted, and bitten like it's a zombie apocalypse movie? Because that happens every year at Notting Hill Carnival. Just ban it. Like, the people that do that don't need to be here. They just don't need to be here. Like, how can you tell me, if I keep watching these videos of third world mobs breaking into Sports Direct on Oxford Street because they can't queue, it's literally a scene from the Camp of the Saints. How can you tell me that I can't draw conclusions from group-based behaviour that I'm seeing on video every day? And so the enforcement cost of the Kemi Badenoch narrative, the Catherine Berbel Singh narrative, the narrative from this guy, Tom Bennett, these are just unmet needs. There's not enough youth clubs. There's not... our education system is too lax. Integration is just around the corner. Sorry, it's not. Because if it were, then the countries that these people came from wouldn't look exactly the same as the way they're behaving in my capital city. And so this is why there's been a lot of discourse at the moment about sort of like radical young people, especially in America. The idea that the Republican movement is completely hijacked by the groypers. And this might seem a bit of a sharp right turn towards the end of this video, but I've written about this before. I'll link it down in the description Substack post. But there was a recent post saying in the New York magazine that Gen Z staffers working for the Republicans appeared to be groypers. Or that when they were asking about Rod Dreher's estimate that 40% of staffers on Capitol Hill were fans of Nick Fuentes, they were told that staffers who had come off to most people as groypers is close to 75%. They're an incidental outgrowth of an underlying sociological phenomenon, which is the rightward drift of the silent majority. It's now developed into something further right than the Trump movement. What you're describing here is not fans of Nick Fuentes. Like, you don't need to watch Nick Fuentes' podcast to draw the conclusion that in London, across the United States, black people commit more crime, for example. This is one of the things that was raised in his contentious interview with Piers Morgan. What you're getting is non-liberal responses from the gut instinct and lived experience of Gen Z. They do not need to have watched a single second of Nick Fuentes' show to come to this conclusion. Instead, they just need to open their Twitter feed, or their Instagram, or their Snapchat, and scroll down ever so slightly, and they will see videos of these teen takeovers. Like, they will see this. Just a horde of people who are not from their country. And again, with video content, purely at first glance, you see skin colour, right? They will see these people not behaving like themselves. They will see these people behaving undesirably in a criminal fashion. And they will just think, well, I don't behave like this. They don't need to be here. If they weren't here, we'd have nice things. And that's the inevitable conclusion that people will reach whether or not you insist that more youth clubs will solve the problem. And the longer people don't talk about this, the more the problem goes on.